Rising water, sinking city. The city of Jakarta, Indonesia, is one of the largest cities in Southeast Asia, serving as a home to 10.6 million people. The city is also a ticking time bomb, at risk of dropping into the sea in its entirety. Husanwau is one of those 10.6 million residents of Jakarta. He lived in the Kampung Aquarium waterfront development, along with his wife, mother-in-law, and 3 children. A man of 34, he has lived in the city for his entire life, working, until recently, as the owner of a small convenience shop. Over those 34 years, Husan has borne witness to the decaying infrastructure of the development, with the severity of flooding in the streets and nearby housing whenever there was rain worsening with each coming year. Despite this, Husan was content with his life. His job brought in money for his family, he owned his own home with running water, and he even had plans to expand his store into the adjacent building. However, this was not to last. Last spring, the government evicted Husan and his family, along with all of the residents of the Kampung Aquarium without warning, and proceeded to demolish the entire development. While the government stated this was so infrastructure could be improved, Husan and many others are suspect in the story, as plans for the area to be redeveloped into several luxury apartment towers have since come to light. Regardless, the residents were moved to government-sanctioned low-cost housing located elsewhere in the city. Husan was horrified by what he found when he arrived. Low-cost housing may as well have been a nicer name for an undeveloped slab of land, lacking any infrastructure to support the basic needs of the resident living there. Housing, aside from a single concrete apartment building and countless rows of tents, was non-existent. More crucially, so was water, with no source of water supplied across the entire housing block. His situation only worsened from there. Overworked and overburdened following their eviction, Husan's mother-in-law grew deathly ill. Unable to stand, let alone walk the 2 miles to the nearest source of water, the pressure was on Husan to save her life, and soon. While against the law, his situation left him with no choice, and Husan, along with several other residents of the low-cost housing block, began work on an illegal well to the groundwater reserves underneath the city. Within a few days, the group reached the water table and began to pump up water to the surface as fast as possible, in the hopes of supplying as much water as is needed. A year has passed since the well was dug, and, as a whole, it's been a positive one. The residents have done their best to turn the low-cost housing block into their new home. New stores and businesses are beginning to come to life, as has a new school headed by Husan's wife. Husan, meanwhile, runs a new store out of his tent, saving up money to rebuild in a more permanent location. As he notes, however, the infrastructure of the block remains underdeveloped and lacking. In addition, the well has had to be deepened multiple times over the year, a strenuous task. In addition, Husan has noticed an increasing frequency in flooding across the housing block. Regardless, Husan remains optimistic about what the future holds, even joking about how one day he'll go back to the Kampung Aquarium and buy himself one of those new fancy apartments. Husan's story is just one story among millions of others around the world, where people do what they need to do to survive, and understandably so. And yet, Husan is now directly contributing to sinking the entirety of the city of Jakarta into the sea. That new unmarked well is just one of hundreds across the city, in place to help the residents survive without the infrastructure of a more developed region of the world. However, the unaccountability of these wells prevents the Indonesian government from taking successful action to address the issue of groundwater overuse. Simply put, their efforts to limit the consumption of groundwater cannot address groundwater usage that they don't know about.